Tinubu Bola Ahmed of the APC, 8 million.
In Africa's largest democratic exercise, the votes have been counted. But will the results hold? Bola Tinubu is Nigeria's president-elect. Described as the godfather of Nigerian politics, the 70-year-old has been a major political operator for decades and a close ally of the incumbent president, Muhammadu Buhari. The opposition, though, have failed to deliver that upset they fought for, and they are crying foul play. Citing fraud and vote rigging, they've promised to challenge the results in court. Tonight on the France 24 debate, at a moment of political and economic upheaval, we'll discuss what's next for Nigeria. Well, joining us on the programme live from London, Nena Ifeanyi-Adufu. She's the Vice Chair of the African Union's Cybersecurity Experts Group. Thanks for joining us on the programme tonight.
Thank you so much, man. It's a pleasure to join you.
Oh, it's a pleasure to have you. Also in London is Olamide Samuel. He's a research associate in nuclear politics at the University of Leicester. Welcome to you as well, sir.
Thank you for having me.
And joining me in the studio, the author and geopolitical consultant, Emmanuel Egeya. Welcome to you, sir.
Yes, thank you very much for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you on the programme. And on the other side of our table tonight, Blessing Ibomo, herself an author and a businesswoman as well. Welcome to you.
Thank you for having me.
So it has been, as we've been hearing, a rather turbulent 24 hours in Nigerian politics. Let's start then with this report by Charlotte Hughes, who takes us through some of the key moments.
A tense wait for Bola Tinubu's supporters, followed by scenes of celebration when he was finally declared the president of Nigeria. The All Progressives Party candidates beat Peter Obi and Atiku Abubakar in a tight race.
This is a shining moment in the life of any man and affirmation of our democratic existence. I take this opportunity also again to appeal to my fellow contestants to let us team up together. It is the only nation we have.
Tinubu, formerly the governor of Lagos, garnered 9 million votes following a controversial weekend. Saturday's voting, though mainly peaceful, was troubled by delays at polling stations. Technical problems disrupted the uploading of results to the Electoral Commission's website, adding to concerns about vote rigging.
It's already very glaring to all Nigerians, except we are making pretenses about it here. And this election is not free, fair and credible.
Claims that the Electoral Commission denies. The new president, who has faced allegations of corruption and questions about his wealth, has a difficult task ahead. As well as surging inflation and cash shortages, Nigeria also faces the threat of a jihadist insurgency.
With that report, and perhaps we can start the programme by crossing live to London. Nena Ifeanyi-Adufu, I'd like to start with you if I can. Was this, in your view, a democratic and free election?
I absolutely wouldn't say so, but I want to speak in terms of the role that technology was supposed to play in these elections and the security thereof. So last year in February 2022, the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria signed the Electoral Act Amendment Bill into law. And by virtue of that act, it gave the Independent National Electoral Commission powers to deploy election technology and make technological enhancement of elections in the manner the commission decides. But then what happened on Saturday was, beyond expectations, cut short the expectations of Nigerians. And Nigeria is not alone in this, because the digitalization of election in Africa has continued to generate contentions. Now, Nigerians were weighing two things importantly. They were weighing the integrity of the election technology system and the transparency of the Independent National Electoral Commission in that election. Now, there were already misconceptions and widespread apprehension that bordered on the security of the election technology systems, the malfunctioning, it being manipulated, and concerns about the digital transmission results, which the INEC president in himself, came to debunk. He came on national TV and said it was fake news because there was already news ahead of the election that INEC had planned to jettison the uploading of polling unit results in real time. And in his words, he said that that was fake news and that the innovation, election technology was introduced by the commission and that the commission cannot turn around and undermine itself. In his words, he said, technology has come to stay. We will upload polling unit level results from the polling units in real time. Citizens will have the right to view the results. After all, who are we serving? The citizens. How can we deprive citizens from access to the results of a process conducted by them? But then what we saw on Saturday was that the BVAS was not functional in many parts. Many voters were not accredited and results were not uploaded in real time. Now, some people tend to talk about the election technology being deployed by Nigeria as a very sophisticated system, which is not. All they needed to do was upload images of the results in real time, and INEC failed to do this. They have come out to say there were glitches, there were technical issues. And just as a last point to point out, if you go back to section 62.2 of the Electoral Act, it is clear. It said the commission shall compile, maintain, and update on a continuous basis a register of election results to be known as the National Electronic Register of Election Results. Of course, expecting that to be in an electronic format, but INEC failed to deliver on this, not minding all the promises that were made. The other thing was discrepancies in the results people had seen at the polling unit and what they are now seeing on the IREV system.
Okay,
so clearly,
well, let's bring some of those questions, if I can, some of those issues that you've just raised there to some of our panelists in the studio with me here. Emmanuel Eger, for example, it is clear, isn't it? There were multiple technical problems, logistical problems, but what is being suggested here is that actually this was more than that. This was a deliberate attempt to disrupt the vote. Do you agree with that? Is there evidence here that the vote was rigged?
I think there is sufficient evidence that these technical challenges that we saw were kind of deliberate, kind of organized.
And where is the evidence of that?
Well, if you see all the videos and documents and everything that have been posted in the social media real time, you see it's now very difficult to do anything and hide in any part of the world, particularly in Africa now. Everybody is equipped with cell phone. So when some of these irregularities are taking place, people are filming real time and putting it on the social media. So we are able to see what's going on. It's video evidence. And this issue of jettisoning the electronic transmission of the results of the election at the polling unit, where the votes are counted, the representatives of the parties are there, they certify, and then the head of the polling unit, all he has to do is just press a button and send the result real time to the collation center. And that was going to be the main technology to help us get rid of vote rigging, and that failed. This is exactly what our colleague in London was just explaining, that the chairman of the INEC, the Independent National Electoral Commission, in fact, many people are asking themselves if the word independent on the Electoral Commission should continue to be there. But it's not only in Nigeria. We have this kind of situation in all parts of Africa where they are called independent.
Well, that's
It's another issue. But that's what she's explaining, that this electronic transfer was allowed by the new electoral law amended, and the president gave his full backing. And the president said, I will not allow anybody to tamper with the results of the elections, and anybody to tamper with the process, either through using immense resources like money to buy votes, to corrupt INEC officials. The president said, if I will be remembered for any legacy at all, let it be that I have delivered free, fair, credible and transparent elections. And I'm very sorry the president might be failing in this promise.
Well, let's ask that question then to Olamide Samuel, who's also in London. Does INEC deserve the label independent in your view? Because there are supporters of the president out there who would say, you know, if the vote was rigged in his favour, he would have won Lagos, the city where he'd been the governor, but he didn't win there, did he?
He didn't win in Lagos. But to start with your first question, I don't believe that INEC deserves the title of being independent. I think public support or public trust in this organization has been very low since 2003. I think the highest sort of public confidence that this organization has enjoyed has been 30%, something which they chose to jettison by being corrupt in terms of the way they handled this election. With the point of Lagos and the fact that Tinubu lost in his home state, I would say it's not so important to focus on the fact that Tinubu lost, but to focus more on the fact that the preferred candidate in Lagos, Peter Obi, didn't necessarily acquire the votes that would reflect the popular support that was seen on social media and was seen reflected in preliminary polls before the election. So, not to allege any sort of foul play, but it's quite curious to now see that the APC are really relying on this point that they lost in Lagos as some way of granting credibility to the entire elections. Any political strategist can see behind, such machinations. I can actually see that this was perhaps maybe even a strategic ploy to lose the battle but win the war.
Lose the battle and win the war. You're smiling there, Blessing Ibomo. Do you agree that that was perhaps the strategy here?
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, it's a pity because the youth went out this time around compared to last election.
Did the youth go out? I have here that this was the lowest voter turnout in any Nigerian election.
No. In terms of registered voters, we had 11% higher compared to 2019.
Okay.
So we had a lot of youth registered, but then on the 25th, due to the technical issues and then the late arrival of INEC officers, they were discouraged. So in regards to the election and then the result, we believe that the system that was placed on the 25th wasn't showing the desire of the youth and people in general. Like, it didn't show the percentage of people that really want to vote.
Including for Peter Obi, a man who seemed to have galvanized the youth vote. Would you agree with that, Nana Ifeyu Ajufo, that Peter Obi energized the youth movement in Nigeria, but that wasn't reflected in the polls? In the end, he came third. He's going to challenge this result in the courts. Do you think he's going to get anywhere legally now?
I would want to believe in the Nigerian judiciary, and I believe that the Nigerian judiciary would set a pace for many other nations. I believe that's something, I don't want to be so pessimistic. I believe in the judiciary, and this situation is just a reflection of what happened in Kenya 2017. Kenya also deployed election technology, and there were so many irregularities, and the Supreme Court of Kenya, for the first time in Africa, asked that the election be cancelled, even when the incumbent was in power. And I'm just looking forward to what the judiciary will do in terms of interpreting, particularly Section 65 of the Electoral Act. And that was why ahead of the election, I kept emphasizing that it was important for the judiciary to be trained in terms of election technology. And why I'm a bit worried about Peter Obi getting any chances in court is because of what we saw with the governor level elections that happened in Nigeria, the Osun elections. And rather than follow the provisions of the Electoral Act, the judiciary simply declared the person who had lost the elections as the winner of the elections. So I believe that a lot has to be done in getting the judiciary to understand the election technology, understand the role that open source evidence should play in this election. One of the panelists had mentioned people using their phones and collecting evidence, which is evidence of what has been happening. So let's just say that we have faith in the judiciary. Perhaps the judiciary will act in the same way the Kenya judiciary acted.
You're shaking your head. Do you not have faith in the judicial system now, Emmanuel Ega?
Well, she's giving some of the reasons why we should be a bit cautious. We saw them proclaiming candidates that had lost at the state level. It's not, she mentioned the example of Oshun, and a worse example even happened in Imo State when the candidate that came forth was simply promoted to the winner position and is the actual governor of Imo State. So currently, we've seen the judiciary, particularly therefore the Supreme Court, not being courageous as let me say the Kenyan equivalent of the Supreme Court of Nigeria, was courageous in the example also she gave about Kenya 2017, the Supreme Court there quashing the elections and asking for new elections to be organized. Actually, with what has happened in Nigeria now, this is where the judiciary should be going. But
you think it's time to rerun the elections? You think there's enough evidence to rerun?
Of course, there is enough evidence to rerun if the judiciary is courageous and fair. But that will not be. We have never been able to have a judiciary, a Supreme Court, that could go against, let me say, the wish of the incumbent government and kind of cancel elections at the presidential level. At the presidential level, we've had several presidential, this is probably the fifth since 1999, and each of them ended up in the Supreme Court, and we never got satisfaction from the Supreme Court in the way they handled the cases.
I mean, it would be a big deal, wouldn't it, if the election were to be rerun? Olamide Samuel in London, do you agree that this election should be rerun based on some of the problems that we're discussing here? I mean, I'm just looking at the numbers. According to the official vote count, Tinubu won 8.7 million votes. His closest rival won 6.9 million. So it looks like a pretty definitive win on paper. But do you also think there are real democratic problems here?
I think there are significant problems with the result. I'm not entirely sure it is responsible to, at this point, say that we should have a rerun of the elections. But I definitely agree with Nena on the fact that, we now live in a world where a lot of the political occurrences on the ground are routinely live streamed and captured by mobile devices and by other, means and posted on social media. We're living in a time where the rise of OSINT, open source intelligence, is becoming quite important for political processes. And what I think should happen is that we begin to look at digital forensic investigations with regards to collating a lot of these pictures and videos that were uploaded from the polling units by individuals and verifying the authenticity of these this social media and these pictures and videos, and then compare them with what was officially uploaded into the INEC's IREV system. Now, this is not going to be a simple task. We have over 530,000 result sheets to independently verify and compare against, open source intelligence. But I believe that if this election were to have any credibility, this is a first step that the Independent Electoral Commission has to take, or some other independent body. The credibility of this election is in too much doubt. However, we're also dealing with an incumbent party that, claims to have won legitimately.
Well, speaking of credibility, I wonder, Blessing Ibomo, if I can ask you a slightly sideways question here, which is about the number of women candidates in the election. There were 10% only, fewer than 10% who were women. And I wonder, when we're talking kind of broadly about the strength of Nigeria's democracy, do you think that matters? Is that important that there were so few women running for office?
Yeah, it's a pity because Nigeria have half of the population are women. And during the primary election, we had a female candidate, but then she stepped down for the elected president. And the outcome right now isn't showing the result of women. Like when the president gave a speech, he said his wife, which is currently a Senate, she's going to step down and become his housewife.
Right.
So it just really shows how he views women. And I hope more women, because we have a lot of talented, hardworking, and resilient women that are ready to make a difference in Nigeria. But I really hope that we'll get to see them more in the political field, because more needs to be done in the political field when it comes to women and young children.
Women and perhaps young people as well. Nana Ife Adjufo in London. I mean, thinking about women's representation, but also young people. I mean, we touched on it earlier. Peter Obi, a man who tried to galvanise the youth vote. How important do you think the role of young people and women as well has been in this election?
Absolutely important. And I always say Africa is in a place to make so much example. And this election has shown the power in the youth, the determination of youths in Nigeria to make a change. I always say that, you know, African youths are not bereft of expertise, of knowledge in the way they are portrayed. And if you think back in terms of how the Twitter ban in Africa and the representation, the government had made of African youths. And, you know, I felt that this was a defining election. Following the NSAS movement in 2 years ago, this was a defining moment for African youths to get someone they really wanted in power. There was so much going on just before the elections, university education strike, and so much happening. And I felt that this was an opportunity to see women, to see young people, importantly, not just women, take seats of power. So many young people came out to vie for positions, but the disenfranchisement and the obvious rigging that happened meant that so many young people could not get into seats. Many young people could not afford the sums of money to allow them be representation in political parties like APC, like PDP, and they went for parties like Labour Party and other, you know, not well-known parties. And what this election process meant that so many of those young people did not get into position. And I just want to call on the African Union to say that I think it is now more important than ever to have election, and particularly the deployment of technology on the table when we discuss peace and security. We need to come to a point, a uniformed approach, so that the youths can have a voice. And indeed, when we have elections, we can say that truly it's a representation of the reality of the expectations of Africans, whether youths and importantly, women as well.
And, you know, unless this election is successfully challenged in the courts, it will be Bola Tinubu who becomes Nigeria's next president. So what do we know about him as an individual and him as a politician? France 24's Olivier Bizot has been taking a look for us.
This is Nigeria's next president, Bola Tinubu. He's from the ruling All Progressives Congress Party, which received about 37% of the votes according to official results.
This is a shining moment in the life of any man and affirmation of our democratic existence.
But opposition parties called the election a sham and demanded a rerun.
The malpractices are on a very, very grand scale.
Tinubu is seen as a political godfather whose support helped current President Buhari win 2 terms in office. After decades spent behind the scenes, the 70-year-old launched his campaign for the presidency with the motto, "It's my turn." He pointed to his time as Lagos State Governor between 1999 and 2007 to sell his candidacy to Nigerians.
They've seen my track record in Lagos.
After stepping down in 2007, he continued to operate from the shadows, overseeing the appointments of several of his protégés to strategic positions.
I am a talent hunter. I put talents in office.
While his supporters portray him as a slick administrator with a knack for picking the right people to get things done, critics see him as a corrupt politician, rewarding his friends with lucrative contracts and hiring thugs to intimidate opponents. Having won the election, Tinubu has a tough job ahead. Nigeria is grappling with an economic crisis, widespread insecurity, and endemic corruption.
That was Olivier Bizot reporting for us there. And Emmanuel Ega, at the end of that report, the word corruption was used to describe Tinubu. He's been accused of money laundering. He's been accused of tax fraud during his time as the governor of Lagos. Do you think there's evidence of that?
Well, it's very difficult to talk about these issues because These are allegations that are made just put in the public domain, and I don't remember any time that the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, which is supposed to address this kind of issues and call the person for questioning, I don't remember any time that they were able to call Bola Tinubu to question and tell us that they found this or they didn't find that. So we really don't have any hard facts to say where this actually happened or not. But we know many people in Lagos do say that there were issues like certain assets of Lagos states being sold by the state and being bought by the proxies of Bola Tinubu. That's in the public domain in Nigeria. So, he never responded to all that. I think he just doesn't. Bola Tinubu has always appeared like one of the untouchables in Nigeria. So he just gets away with everything. But I think now he's apparently won the elections. I don't believe that we're going to get anything from the cases that will be filed at the Supreme Court. So he's going to remain the president at the end of the day. And these corruption charges are not going to, we're going to just leave that aside and continue forward from there.
Oladame Samuel, do you think he's untouchable?
Well, if he wasn't untouchable before the election results, he certainly is now. It's quite interesting that there have been disaggregated pieces of information regarding corrupt practices and even some criminal enterprise, not within Nigeria, but from the United States and from other international parties. And even with whatever evidence they claim to have on him, they've not been able to bring or collate this evidence and bring him to justice. So it would be, unfair of me to parrot allegations that have not necessarily led to a conviction. But now that he is the president-elect, and if he will be inaugurated as the president of Nigeria, he is going to inherit certain immunities that would surely make him untouchable for sure.
Nana Ifeye Adjufo, I wonder what you make of what we've been hearing. I was quite struck by his campaign slogan that was, "It's my turn." I mean, some people suggested that sort of, reeked of an entitlement for the job. What did you think of that? And what do you think of this conversation we're having about allegations of corruption?
Totally embarrassing for anyone in such a huge democracy to come up and say, "It's my turn." And of course, if you've been following how APC came into power, of course, he was a helmsman, he was a front runner, a godfather who actually assisted, of course, in allowing the incumbent or enabling the incumbent to come into power. And if I say I did not foresee him coming up 8 years after, I would be lying. I knew there would be a time when he would come up to take up his place. But then it's ironical that someone makes such a pronouncement, and at the end of the day, he becomes indeed the president-elect. And it's interesting because for so many African countries, you see people who stand up and speak as if they own a country, and we're talking about a country of over 200 million people, talking about youths who have decisions, who have made decisions, and that takes you back to the whole election process. It was a simple process, like I keep saying, and of course, anyone making any allegation of corruption here would not necessarily be making an unfounded allegation. INEC had one thing to do. It was just to ensure the credibility, verify the results transmission system, intensify the availability of credible information for party agents and for stakeholders, ensure transparency, upload results. And even if he won the election, I'm not saying he didn't win, even if he won, INEC doing their job in the way they had said they would do, they would conduct the elections, would have emphasized the credibility of his winning. But for now, we can't say for sure. And you wouldn't, like I said, you wouldn't blame anyone who brings up issues of corruption and the way Lagos has been run, with him being a godfather and, emphasizing again and again that the elections on Saturday were not conducted appropriately, and it has undermined the credibility of the election, credibility of INEC. And like I keep saying, I'm looking forward to what the judiciary would do in light of this and the vulnerabilities that went on with the election.
As you say, big questions now about the credibility of the election, about allegations of corruption. They are just allegations, though, as you've all emphasised. Another issue, though, Blessing Ibomo, is religion, isn't it? Because normally, as I understand it, in Nigerian elections, a Muslim candidate would pick a Christian as their vice. That didn't happen this time. Nonetheless, he won anyway. Do you think that's significant? What kind of role do you think religion played in politics this time around?
I mean, in 2015, when he was supposed to be the vice president with President Buhari, he said he's not going to play along because he knew it's going to be Muslim ticket. So he knew already that in Nigeria, where we have almost 50% of it being Muslim and Christian, 45 thereabout, he knew that won't play a role in Nigeria. So he decided to step down for the current vice president, which is a Christian. But in this recent election, it was Muslim ticket.
Does that bother you?
It does.
Why?
It does, because half of the population isn't represented. You know, what exactly does he know about being a Christian? I know his wife is a Christian, but the VP, he is a Muslim. So how are Christians going to be represented in this new tenure that is going to play out? It's an issue that we need to look out.
Emmanuel, do you agree? It's an issue. We don't have Christian representation in these two big positions.
Yes, it could be an issue. It all depends on the capacity of and the will of the president-elect when he becomes president to do the necessary to reassure the Christian segment of the Nigerian population, which, like Blessing said, is almost half of the Nigerian population. Well, Nigerians are very sensitive to that because we are getting out of a government, out of a regime that distributed major positions in government in a way that many sections of the country felt marginalized. The Christians felt marginalized, and some ethnic groups felt marginalized. These are the things that potential president, if he's confirmed in a few weeks' time, Bola Tinubu will have to address very urgently how he's going to kind of bring back the Nigerians together to accept, to work together, whether it's Christians or Muslims, whether it's this ethnic group or that ethnic group, to work towards a particular ideal that he's going to now instill into the Nigerian politics. All depends on how President Bola Tinubu will address this issue and manage it.
Indeed.
But it is an issue.
It is an issue. Ola Mayday, what do you think? Because as we're having this conversation, you know, I'm thinking about how insecurity in Nigeria, in the northeast of the country, but also in the south, has apparently got a lot worse in the last few years. Tinubu, a close ally of Muhammadu Buhari, the current president, so assuming he is inaugurated as the country's next leader, will his strategy when it comes to tackling that kind of insurgency look any different, or is it going to be more of the same?
I'll just pull back the conversation very slightly to the issue of the Muslim ticket before talking about some of the national security implications of the president elect. Nigeria is still a country where politics isn't on the basis of ideology, or on the basis of, ideology as we understand it in the West, where we have, far right or far left or conservative or what have you. Nigeria is still a political space that just tries to accommodate federated interests with, almost an even split between Christians and Muslims, and almost, even splits between the different ethnic groups apart from the Northerners. And so, having a political party completely ditch what is called the Federal Character Commission in favor of narrow interest-centric candidates is extremely irresponsible And I think this would actually feed into the national security landscape of Nigeria in the future. We already saw heightened sensitivities with regards to how Buhari, for example, dealt with the issue of militancy in the South. And much of the sensitivity around this had to, his religion, his state of origin played a part in how individuals that are proximal to the security interests perceived government intervention. We still deal with insurgency groups, both in the North and in the South, that still enjoy sympathy from civil society, not official civil society as in NGOs and what have you, but civil society in terms of, individuals that live in their locations, the market women, the traders, that sort of thing, right? And so, having a presidency that isn't reflective of the federated character of our country is going to pose a massive obstacle to delegitimizing a lot of this insurgency and a lot of the separatist groups that we have in the country. I'll just pause there for now.
Nana Afe Ajufo, what do you make of that? Are you concerned about some of those changes? We're talking about the Muslim ticket, for example. And do you think this new government, assuming it is sworn in, will have the capacity to tackle these serious security problems that have been alluded to?
I absolutely agree with Dr. Lamide in terms of the differences you see in the dynamics of democracy and politicization in Africa. But then I'll play the devil's advocate here and say that if for the first time we then have a Muslim ticket, perhaps this will be an opportunity to also change the dynamics. Perhaps if they actually get into power, because somehow I'm still doubting, I still don't want to believe what has happened on Saturday, but if they indeed take the seat of power, this could be an opportunity then to change the dynamics and actually put the interest of Christians at heart. It could also be an opportunity to unify the differing religious positions and show that we are actually one as a country. But then there is so much work that still needs to be done. It's not just on the basis of religion, because religion is just an iota of the challenge. This election has shown that there is huge tribalistic division in Nigeria. I think the problem with tribalism is even worse than it is with religion, because then people of the same religion also have contentions and disparities in terms of tribalism. And that was the issue with Peter Obi coming out, and there were contentions about he's an Igbo man, he shouldn't rule, Igbo people would not rule, and so many hate speech you see on social media today since Saturday has been on the basis of his tribe. And so religion is just one of the issues, but I'm more worried also about the tribalistic dimensions. And hopefully, like I said, playing the devil's advocate, I think this is a moment. The next 4 years should be a time to unify the country on the basis of religion and on the basis of tribe as well. And looking at the insecurity that has been going on, he has so much to do at this time.
Emmanuel Ega, you were nodding there. Do you agree then that it is tribalism that is a real issue now, and it may be a big challenge for the man we assume to be the new president to try and bring people together?
Yes, national cohesion. Yes. That's the main issue, because the country is heavily polarized. I think what Nena is saying is that religion is a big problem, but people within the same religion are or can be polarized ethnically, and that's the example she gave about Peter Obi not being totally supported by some of his own Igbo people who are Christians like him for political reasons or ethnic reasons. You see, so that makes it really complex, and it's true. But what I see in it is this is, like she said, it's a golden opportunity.
So you have some optimism now?
Yes, let me share it for at least one optimism.
Let's hear it.
I didn't quite share for the judiciary with her, but let me share this one. That yes, it's a challenge for the president and his Muslim, the Muslim ticket that will rule Nigeria, to help us to change the paradigm and the narrative that we need to do that balancing ethnically and religiously before we can get the best in governance from the nation. Let them prove the contrary to us. Let them prove the contrary to us in 4 years' time. Let us see that they've made Nigeria work even though we have a Muslim ticket. They have to turn that narrative around. They have to turn quite a number of things around. The issue about security, Bola Tinubu has to turn it around. We don't need to be seeing this kind of situation where the government is not able to tackle insecurity, insurgency in the north and some of the insurgencies in the south very effectively. And people believe it is because of, the Muslim influence on the governance in the country that we cannot tackle what is going on in the northern part of the country, which is driven mainly by Muslims. So we have a situation, the president and his Muslim vice president, both of them, they have to change this narrative, that they will be able to tackle Boko Haram without shaking, even if Boko Haram is a Muslim insurgency. And then that they wouldn't be too hard on the insurgencies in the south, while appearing to be too lenient in some cases towards the insurgents in the north. These are the things that they will have to turn around.
It's certainly a complex picture, and Blessing Iboma, I mean, what do you think in the northwest of the country, this part of the country we're talking about, Boko Haram is a really dangerous actor. From what you've observed, is the state in retreat there? Have things that Muhammadu Buhari's government done worked? Do you have any optimism now?
It's hard to say, because when he came into office, he told us that it's going to be much better, and in terms of the crisis, but then we saw a lot of kidnapping of young girls, kidnapping and killing, and then we saw the Abuja train attack. So it's very hard to say. We really hope, we have to be optimistic about the whole situation, really hope that the situation gets better. Being a Muslim ticket, they know how to communicate and, know the real issue going on and reach to the Boko Haram and just try to negotiate with them and see what happens. Aside from Boko Haram, we also have the Biafra. So in Nigeria, we need to unite together. There are a lot of issues going on right now, and we really hope that the current elects based on INEC will be able to sort out and bring and unite Nigeria as a whole together.
Nana Ife-Ajufo, as we're talking about the security problems, which are obviously, very significant, we can't forget as well that Nigeria is going through something of economic stagnation as well right now, isn't it? How do we know what the new government intends to do to try and tackle that? Briefly, if you can. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of time.
Absolutely. Promises have been made, as is typical, promises in the form of manifesto, and just leading up to the elections with the new currency change, just before that as well, the exchange rates for dollar and all of that. I would just say at this point that it's promises we can't tell for now. They've said the usual table manner talk of things will change, youth will be given an opportunity, the economy will change, which were promises made 8 years ago by the same party, 4 years ago by the same party. Now we have the same party. I am not optimistic at all, absolutely not optimistic. But like I said, we will just have to see what happens. But whether I believe so much will change, I am in doubt. And so many Nigerians are also in doubt of that happening.
All right. I think we are unfortunately going to have to leave it there, though. But I want to thank very much indeed all of our panelists. I feel like we could have had this conversation for probably another hour. Blessing Iboma with me here in the studio, Emmanuel Edgar with me in the studio as well. In London, it was Ola Midday and Samuel and Nina Ife-Ajufo. Thank you very much, all of you, for talking to us today about the elections in Nigeria and what may come next. This has been the France 24 debate. I'm Nadia Massi. Thank you and good night.